is the Finance Committee meeting. Today is the 23rd of March, and it is at 5:30 I have. So who we have in attendance today, myself, Amy Fiden, I see Paul Benjamin, I see Andy Kopacki, I see Shardul Parmar, and I see David Phil. So
Full house.
full house. And tonight we are going to be going over the following budgets, I believe. Maybe we might have something on later if Linda has some, but my plan is we will start and be going over HR and benefits. Then we'll move over to Board of Health. We then have police and then legal and accounting. So today, Linda will be the one in charge of sharing the screens and getting us to all the places we need to go. So thank you, Linda.
All right, there it is.
And welcome Jen and Joan. I will let them be the starters on this.
Let me see, you are page 29. Let me just get you there. It's a little hard to scroll through here. Okay, Jen, is that showing up on the screen well enough?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, so not too much to actually go over here. First two lines are just Joan and myself and our salaries. The next one is our financial assistant. This is raised from the previous year because for most of the last fiscal year, the position was part-time and then was brought into full-time in November. So this is just accounting for that to be full-time for the entire year. The next line is employee buyouts. This is a new line item. We had discussed with Linda and Carolyn about having a place for retiring staff and the buyouts that we have to do when they retire to go, where individual departments wouldn't have to try to be compensating for that in the line and then accounting back down the next year, where it could just all be in one place. And this coming year, we do have someone that works for two different departments that's retiring. So that way we could just combine it all into one in one space. The only other changes are payrolls going up a little bit, which is to be expected. We are also hoping to go paperless for paychecks this year, which should hopefully help there. And the only other line that changed is an advertising line, which is also new. It was previously in the select board budget when there wasn't really an HR department. But now it just makes more sense for when I post jobs in the Gazette or on any websites that charge a fee for it to be able to just be paid directly out of HR, since it's for advertising for open positions.
I have a question. So what did we do in the past when we had an employee buyout? Where did we take the money from?
The department head would increase their salary line item to accommodate that person. And then we weren't always, sometimes they didn't have a full year's notice though. So they didn't know 1 year to put it in the next year. So maybe it would squeeze out some other salaries, or we'd have to go for a reserve fund transfer or figure out some other way to make it balance at the end of the year. Just a sneak preview on the warrant. I'm going to request an article, or have requested an article go onto the warrant that actually would be put this kind of an expense into an article. So we would fund a basic amount from free cash. It's called an employee buyout fund or uncompensated benefits fund or something. There's some official word for it. So we have a trust fund so that we can begin to address what are basically unfunded liabilities in the town, which are employees who are going to be retiring, but suddenly that will be a pop-up. Mostly what this is unused vacation and unused sick days. So they do get a single buyout when they leave. And so again, as Jen said, they have to pop their budget up and then remember to bring it down. And it just makes strange things happen to individual departmental budgets. So I think that the benefit would be that we wouldn't have to budget in the same way. We wouldn't necessarily need a full year's notice anymore to know that we had funds set aside for this buyout. And it will look good on our, for our credit rating to begin to be addressing this as an unfunded liability.
So if we have this in the article, why are we putting it in the budget as well?
Well, Amy, the article would come after the budget. So going forward, I wouldn't put it in, we may not have it. If the article passes, we may not need to have this in the HR budget anymore. But I was a little hesitant to not provide for it because the budget's passes before we get to the article. That's the only reason.
Okay.
That is a vulnerable spot. I mean, I certainly could make sure that we had provided for it. I don't think it's going to be a big initial amount that we put in. I was thinking, $10, $15, $25,000, just so that we get in the habit of addressing this issue. But you've identified another possible way to address this. But if we had that article first, I would drop it, but I'm a little concerned about leaving it unaddressed.
I don't have any other questions. Those were my questions. Anyone else?
Oh, that's thank you.
Okay, Joan is the benefits are on page 49. Stop. There you go, Joan. I'm going to make that a little bigger for you. Is that fully visible?
Yes.
Okay.
No,
It
it was.
But
There. Sorry, there.
it's back. Thank you.
Joan, you're muted.
Does it help if I unmute? And I was worried about my thing working or not. So the first item is the retirement, which is Hampshire County retirement. This goes in for just the employees that are part of that system. We give them an aggregate salary in the fall so that they are provided with our numbers and can give us this assessment for the next fiscal year. So it is strictly based upon salaries as of September 30th. The next item, workers' comp, I think, did Sue provide that figure?
I think Susan handled workers' comp.
Right.
That one and the last item.
And that's the workers' comp is actually another item based upon estimated salaries for the coming fiscal year, and each segment of employees has a different rate, a workers' comp rate. And so I'm sure she uses that to estimate it. Unemployment insurance, that I'm keeping the same as previously. We've been very fortunate and had little or no claims. We've only had one claim, which probably did use up the budget for this year. But we've been fortunate, and we just leave it at the 30,000. And if we're finding we do get hit, then we would probably go to the next meeting to cover that. I really don't want to tie up funds when not necessary. Health insurance, we estimated that, I think, at a 7% increase. It did come in at 6.7% increase to the premiums for FY24. So we really got that pretty close to what it is going to be. We are still through the Hampshire County Group Insurance Trust. This is probably the first increase in 2-3 years, and before that the increases have been pretty minimal. Life insurance, this is a $2,000 policy that's available to new hires working 20 hours or more per week on a regular basis. We pay $1.42 a month. The employee pays $1.42 a month. So that number is based upon current enrollments and expected enrollments when we have some retirees and they carry on through. The Medicare, that went up, and we are going to have a shortfall this year in the Medicare with increasing wages, new positions added, a lot of outside detail for the Route 9 work. So we've seen an increase. We are going to fall short this year, but I think we'll have enough in, hopefully, the health insurance to cover that for this year. But that's why we went with the increase for next year. And that is my portion of it. Does anyone have any questions on any of that at this point?
Okay.
Sorry,
And-
no,
Thank you.
no questions on this end. The bills are what the bills are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Susan covered the last one, which is insurance, and I'll just make a quick reference to OPEB, which those are other post-employment benefits. This is the another unfunded liability that we are contributing to over the years. And we cut this back in 20. We had been up to 260,000 a year. We cut this back in 20 and started building it back again during our recovery. So I did add an extra 50,000 to it this year as a request. We don't have to take a lot of time to discuss this now, because I think it is going to be one of the ones that we discussed when you're discussed next week when you're trying to plan your full budget. So.
Quick question on OPEB while you're there.
Uh-huh.
When we do add new positions or we convert, some go from part-time to full-time, is there some form of calculation that is added to OPEB to accommodate those new positions?
It does go into our full, we're audited annually for OPEB. And so they tell us what our total obligation is. We don't necessarily adjust what our contribution is. The contribution is whatever we can do each year. And we have a contribution plan, but no, we don't actually recalculate our contribution each year to see how much more or less we ought to be putting based on that.
So, but when we're adding positions, we are increasing our liability there.
Yes, we are. If they stay, it's yes. If they stay long enough to qualify for the post-employment benefits, which is what, Joan, 10 years?
Right.
So, yeah.
Mhm.
So each new hire is not necessarily an increase.
So when the actuaries do their, by every other year?
They do every other year, but they do
They
a
update
mini,
whatever figures we
a
have
mini
for
on the
people.
alternate year. So they never skip us.
Yeah, and they always get the updated information on employees, health insurance enrollments, whether they're eligible for retirement or when they'll be eligible. So they take all that into account.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, we can move back to page 43 to get to health.
And I will say, have a nice evening, folks. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you
Yes,
very
thank you
much.
Thanks,
very much.
Joan.
Bye.
There we are. There's a few people on for health.
Okay, Linda, this is Peter. I'm going to try to kick it off. For those of you that do not know who I am, my name is Peter Laurie, and I am the part-time administrative assistant for the Board of Health. I'm also the person that put together, the budget that you're looking at. On the call or on this meeting also is Dr. Susan Mosler, who's the chairperson of the Board of Health, and our health inspector, Ben, is on as well. So the budget in its totality year over year, the big increases or the big changes, if you will, are really in the hours of the people that work in the office. And that includes Ben, our health agent, who's going to be transitioned into, into the position of director in July, as soon as budget is approved. And also the administrative position is being increased slightly from 7 hours a week to 10 hours a week. What we're doing is we're essentially professionalizing our efforts in the Board of Health. We're doing a lot of the work that should have been done over the years that perhaps was not getting done. A lot of the work that perhaps would have been done during the years of the pandemic obviously didn't need to be done, primarily because a lot of the food establishments during the pandemic weren't even allowing customers in, weren't serving food, whatever. So now, fast forward to where we are in 2023 and into 2024, all the food establishments are getting inspected. They're getting educated in terms of what they should be doing. It's a much better feel, much better customer experience, if you will. In terms of the inspections that we're doing for Title V and things like perk tests and so forth, currently we're using an outside contractor on an as-needed basis. The game plan long term is to train and add to the skill set of our health inspector, Ben, so that he can accomplish all of those tasks. I'll stop there. Susan, if you have anything to add, or Carolyn, or Ben, or whomever, or if there are any questions.
Susan, do you want to add anything? It's still. You're muted.
She might be on mute.
Sorry about that. I think Carolyn can also join in this conversation as well. Our needs of our health agent are very broad. As Peter kind of alluded to, we have septic and Title V concerns. We have housing issues that come up in the town that the Board of Health is now working. Ben is working collaboratively with all of our other departments and setting up systems, a systematic approach to housing problems and the like. And we have 150 food establishments that all need to be inspected. So Ben is now working 18 hours a week. I think that anybody in town who has had the pleasure to work with him can speak to his professionalism and his high level of competence. He's just finished the soil testing course. It was a rigorous 4-day course at UMass. And he was also recently took the course on septic systems. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I know Carolyn or Ben or somebody else can speak to the details that 18 hours a week is not cutting it as far as the workload. And these are all tasks that the town, the Board of Health, the town is required to do. And, they serve the people of Hadley to ensure our health and well-being.
Yeah, Susan, if I can just add to that, where we started 3 years ago and where we are now. When I got here, we were outsourcing with a private nonprofit who was just doing 100 annual inspections a year. Just that was it. So we had a huge gap. And we have slowly we did outsource again for a inspector, but that really didn't work out, just very, very part-time. And so Ben came along. He came from the Boston area, right, Ben? The Boston area, but and actually has more qualifications than just a health inspector. And I think that has been the great thing about working with the Board of Health is everyone realizes we need to bring this department to a different level. And so this transition, if you see this, we went from a health inspector actually to a health agent director. So Ben has already gotten trained in 2 areas. And I think you should hear a little bit about it because you'll see how important he's filling a gap. But also several years ago, it was voted that if an elected board started to have staff in their department, that those stipends would go away, and that's been gradually been happening in Hadley. So you'll see we took some of that money, we took the stipends away and for the elected officials, and that has gone towards the director position. But Ben, if you can just like go over just what you've just gotten, you know, the certifications that you've gotten and what else you do, because I don't think Hadley's ever had it. And I think it's important for that they hear it.
Sure. Just want to confirm, can I be heard?
Yep.
Okay, great. And I don't know if I can, for some odd reason, my phone isn't showing my screen. So hopefully I'm in view. People can see me.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, fair enough. My background is I was a health agent in Somerville, just outside of Boston, as Carolyn stated. And I was there for about 5 years, and I ran the food safety division in that city. After that point, I jumped over to Legal Seafoods, private industry, and was an assistant director for their quality assurance department. And eventually I jumped over to a food manufacturer that commands, which means that they make other businesses products for them. And with that, it requires all kinds of certifications related to, well, I won't get into all of it, but there is a lot required to be able to be in compliance with that type of a business. Anyways, since then, I've decided to jump back into public health. I have 2 young kids who are taking a ton of my time, and that type of a job that I was just speaking of was, like about 80 hours a week. So I couldn't do both. So I took a part-time job here with Hadley. I've absolutely loved it. I love everyone I'm working with. I was telling Carolyn the other day, there's not one person that I interact with, frequently that I don't think it's a pleasure working with them. And I can't say that for all of everywhere I've worked previously. So this has been a great pleasure. Since I've joined, there are some needs here in Western Mass that the Boston area didn't have, which for example, which has been stated, septic is big out here. And the training that was necessary to make sure that I'm making the right decisions and regulating the way it should be regulated required things like a certification with the system itself, for example, which would be septic. But I'm taking my soil evaluator certification right now because you need to make sure you know where it's supposed to go and you don't put it where it shouldn't be, that type of thing. And that's a very complicated, it sounds easy, but the requirements for that are very high. So anyways, we're trying to make sure that the role that I fill is multifaceted. Anything that Hadley has that needs to be dealt with, that I have the tool set that will be able to get the need met and done in a professional, competent way that any other health department, or for that matter, if I'm no longer in the position at some point, the next health inspector or director that walks through the door will be able to look at the work, understand it, and see that it was done in compliance with existing Massachusetts law and code. So that's an example, but there's other things that we've been focused on, including housing, which is a big issue that I think maybe hasn't been addressed as it. I don't want to say that as it should have, but maybe hasn't had the attention paid to it that it's due. So we've been focusing on that. We've made great strides interdepartmentally. And for that reason, I think that there's more than necessary than just a health agent. There is a need for there to be leadership with other departments and collaboration that isn't just me going out, doing an inspection, coming back and putting the inspection in a folder, or the inspection report in a folder. It's much more than that that's necessary to be able to be successful at the role and ultimately create a healthy environment in Hadley. So, I talked a little bit there. I don't want to go on too long, but that's a quick breakdown of things that I've been trying to do in the short period of time I've been with Hadley.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was great. It was good to understand. I don't think we all completely understand what your role is, but that was very helpful.
Thank you.
There is one more addition we need to put in this budget, Ben, and Carolyn. Is this
Yeah.
the $5,000 for the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District?
Just to give the board a quick idea of what that is. We have to do mosquito testing to make sure there aren't various diseases that are carried by mosquitoes. And if there is, for example, Triple E is deadly. If there was to be a testing done that's found that mosquito in Hadley had it, then we would be able to get state assistance in dealing with that, and we'd be able to let the community know. And we aren't equipped locally to be able to handle that. So Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control would be handling that for us, and that's why we need the money to be able to. We have to pay them to do that, and so that's the reason for the request for the 5,000.
So I'm a little confused so that line item just didn't get in. Is that what you're saying, Linda?
Yes, and we'll be revisiting you for 23 and 22 as well. I'm not quite sure how it didn't get into the system, but for 22, we have to put it in for a prior year bill. Is that full 5,000, Carolyn, also for that year? Because we've now been using them since 22. And then for 23, I think we'll need to do that as a reserve fund transfer because it's not in the budget this year either. So somehow, go ahead.
As I understand, it was 2,500 for last year, which we didn't pay, and then 2,500 for this year. I wasn't part of the construction of this budget, but I believe I remember hearing that in conversation.
Okay.
I was not aware that came out of the Board of Health budget, so.
It wasn't coming out of anywhere, Susan.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
We don't know where it was going. We don't know where the invoices were going. So
I knew we were participating and that we're required to participate in some type of program. It's not optional, but I didn't realize that was charged through the Board of Health.
Right.
And we're able to do it because you now have a full functioning running department. Otherwise it could have been select board too, but it just seems it's just a bill at this point to pay. So, and it can sit in the select board, it can sit here, but since it seems to fall under the health area, it seemed like a better place to put it. So we will be doing we'll find out the exact amount, whether it's the 2,500 or the 5,000 and get something signed for a reserve fund transfer for this year if we can't find any other place for the funds. And also Ben is doing all this extra training that he's talking, well, it's extra for the town. I mean, it's extra training for him too, but it was training that was not anticipated when the budget was done last year. We may be looking to add, I was estimating 1,000 or something. So they'll get together a reserve fund transfer and bring it, submit it so that it can be heard at one of your next finance committee meetings.
And just to clarify, this is the state program, Massachusetts Mosquito Control, that we're using, correct? That we're part of for Pioneer Valley. When you say Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control, it's not a company; it's a state.
A district.
The district.
Right. Okay.
Right.
And this is something that just started in 22, or is this something that we've been doing all along, but just taking from somewhere else?
So we've been doing it. I know that I'm pretty sure when I started there was a lot of discussion. And I think there was some confusion when that whole discussion was coming on about the mosquito spraying. And there was some confusion about that they really were two different entities. So again, I'm not really sure what happened with the invoice, but I think they have been doing it.
This is separate from the spraying issue.
Yeah, people were getting confused about that.
This is testing that we're required to do. I don't know when it started, but I've been on the board. I know it's been at least for the past, as long as I've been, it's for 3 years.
It says fiscal year 18 on their website for Hadley.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh.
So if we do end up putting it in that, so if I get this right, we're going to put in, you're going to add a line item to the Board of Health for this, for the
Right.
fiscal year 24, but all the
Yes.
past bills, we will be paying out of a reserve fund transfer.
The current year you will. The past year, you can't, even finance committee can't pay a prior year bill, so it has to go on to the town meeting under the article. You know, we have that article, which is
Yeah.
prior year bills.
Mhm.
So it's one of those cleanup articles that we do.
Okay.
There's always something. We keep thinking there's always something that slipped through. So-
I'm fine with all that. What I was thinking of in my head and why I was asking that is one thing I wouldn't want to see is us increase, add a line item for 5,000 if the bill's only normally 2,500. If the bill was 2,500 for the last one and then 2,500 for the next one, I wouldn't want to see a 5,000 because
Right.
then that's not the normal year.
Of
We'll
course.
We'll make sure. We'll make sure.
Yeah. I didn't actually see, I just talked with Jennifer and now maybe I
Yeah, I didn't see
misunderstood
it.
something. Yeah, but we'll check it for
It
sure.
says a minimum of $5,000, remember.
There's our expert. Thank you, Paul.
Welcome. Plan on 5.
Any
All
other
right.
questions? Board of Health,
I'm
or
good.
does
Good
Board of Health want to
presentation.
add anything else?
I think we're good.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
Good evening.
So now with police, I know Mike Mason is here. Tell me how you want things shown, Mike. Chief.
Linda, you could probably, I mean, I would imagine everybody has the line items in front of them. It's in my PowerPoint.
Oh, okay.
The only thing I'll probably refer back to most often is that fact sheet that I typed up. So I would say have that ready, have that up, and then just be ready to go. I only have like one slide in the PowerPoint that I want to go to towards the end of my presentation.
Okay, so I will start with the fact sheet.
Yeah, that's perfect.
What page was the police on? So I can just have that
Oh,
open.
the police is on page 34 and dispatch is 36.
Yep. There we go.
All right, so I have that up.
All right, if anybody doesn't, I went on the town website to try to find everybody's email address, but I know that there's been some turnover in our finance committee, so we can make sure that you have digital copies of these, so those hyperlinks to those articles will actually work for you.
I did email them out late this afternoon to them, so.
Perfect. I should have known. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, no, well, I should have sent them
Okay.
out sooner. Actually, it's Amy that reminded me this afternoon, but
Okay.
yes, they will have,
So-
they already have it in an email.
All right, so I'm gonna, most of my presentation, as I mentioned, you have the numbers in front of you. I'm just gonna hit the major increases, or at least what I see are the major increases. If you disagree and think that something else went up higher than you would expect, certainly ask me about it, but I'm gonna hit the major increases, and I'm gonna try, most of my presentation is gonna be to try to explain why. I know most of the time I just say the numbers and we kind of roll through it, and I think this time really explaining the whys of where we're at in policing and communications is going to be important. So your largest increases that you're going to see are in your wage lines. Okay, so your wages for full-time officers, for the chief, for overtime, and for training. Those are going to be your biggest increases. And the reason for those increases are for contractual increases and for milestones reached. So the police and dispatch, and I'll get to them in a minute, just renegotiated their contracts for 3 years. Wage studies were done. And once again, the town did increase their wages to try to, do some catch up for them. As far as I'm concerned, My contract, I think 2 contracts ago, the select board wanted me to obtain my master's degree as well as get some other certifications. I did complete my master's this past December, as well as receive certifications for emergency management so that I can help in that aspect of things. So those are the increases. Each one of those is increased based upon those contractual items. But I want to kind of focus on why we're doing those things, at least with the officers specifically. And it's because we really need to change our focus in law enforcement to recruitment and retention, mostly retention. We are very close to having full staffing right now. We did just lose another officer about a week ago. I got a resignation for somebody, but we're so close to having full staffing, and we have a great police department. But if you see just the top of that, nationally, what you're looking at is a resignation rate that's just rapidly increasing. We're not in a hiring crisis. We are in hiring Armageddon right now. It's really, really difficult to find quality individuals who want to be police officers. If you look at that first bullet point, just to kind of bring it back to a local level and a specific level, we've lost so many officers in the last 2 years after COVID and police reform and everything that 40% of our workforce are still in their probationary period. And again, as you can see, we just lost another officer this week. When I typed that up, I think it was when I edited it, it was about a week ago. Many of you have probably seen the document that I've produced in the past that shows what it costs to lose and replace a police officer. Previous to police reform, that was about $150,000 or so. You lose somebody, you have to retrain a new person. That's about what it costs. It's more now. So if you scroll down a little bit, Linda, we can just go into the reform changes and what really kind of changes here as far as why we need to really focus on retention. We need to train these officers more. We need to test them more, and we need to pay more to do all of these things. It's one of the reasons why you're seeing increases in those lines. You can see right there that list of items that we have to do just to hire a new police officer. Now, it can literally take up to a year before you actually offer somebody a job, before you can put a badge on their chest and send them out into the streets of Hadley to do police work. You have to post your position, you have to interview, you have to do conditional offers. PAT is a physical abilities test. They have to pass that first. Then you have a Cooper Standards, which is another physical abilities test. That one, they usually take about 2 weeks before they actually enter the police academy. After they've done all of the other medical and all the other stuff, that has a 70% fail rate. We have had people fail that test before. And when that happens, you have to essentially either have them skip the academy and put them on the back burner, or you need to find another person. And then you need to do all this stuff all over again. We now have post certification in this state. Just to start your post certification, there's an 11-page questionnaire as well as a 17-section background check on top of our own background check that we have to do. You have your psych exam, your medical exam, and then you have your placement into academy. If they pass all those things, graduation, and then we have field training to make sure that they learned what they were supposed to learn in the academy and they can do this job. So just to give you an idea as far as costs go, when in our training line, it costs, in order to do all of these things and just get somebody into the academy, you're talking about $7,000 or so. You have your tuition, you have your equipment, all of the things that you have to do. You have to pay for your psych exam, you have to pay for the medical, you have to pay for the PAT. All of that stuff costs money. So you're talking about $7,000 per person. Now, once they're hired, you now have approximately, once they're hired and they're actually a police officer, this is where some of the other lines get hit as far as costs go. So all of the active police officers, including myself, we now have within the police reform bill package, we now have 19 Mass General Law mandated topics of training that have to be done every single year. It equates to about 50 plus hours of training for every single person in this building. That is not covered under your regular regular line. They can't take training while they're stopping out, pulling over cars. So you're talking about a training line that needs to exist for that. That had to get increased. I shared with Carolyn a little while back. I'm not sure she was actually at the meeting, but a recent STAM meeting, the small town administrators group. I don't know exactly what it's called. They actually suggested that you should be budgeting up to 80 hours per officer to cover all the new police reform training. That the police reform bill did a lot of good things. Post-certification is a good thing. It also did a lot of bad things. It also did a lot of things that were overlooked, and it had a bunch of unintended, at least I hope they were unintended consequences. It has eliminated part-time policing as we knew it. As many of you probably know, and I know, Amy, you've been on the finance committee for a while. Chief Huckowitz, when he was running the department, there was a lot of part-time officers here. We used to have about 10 or 15 what we called special police officers, which are essentially part-time officers. We paid them minimal pay rates, and we had a long time to get to know these people, to train them, to see if they were a good fit for our department. The police reform bill completely eliminated any ability to create that position any longer. We have no more special police officers. There is no one that we can train and get to know and learn and make sure we can get them through a police academy to be a full-time police officer. They don't exist anymore. So we are hiring people off the street, or we are stealing people from other police departments. That is where we're at right now. So if you scroll down just a little bit more, Linda, I can explain that, we gave them great raises. Carolyn and Jen helped with these negotiations. Joyce is always involved. They got another contract with really good raises. But again, we're talking about the raises were off of a 2-year-old wage study with about 20 different towns, and they're still right in the middle. Okay, so in order to be able to do the second thing that I said, which is basically steal officers from other departments, we got to be able to compete with them. And so that's one of the other reasons that you're seeing these increases, and you see such a high wage increase that they negotiated with these officers. I'm sorry. Yeah, right there.
Want me to move?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Okay, so another part of this is to talk again. I already kind of hit on wages, but it's also to talk about workload, because one of the other reasons that you are seeing an increase in the full-time police officer wage line is for a couple of reasons. Number one, supervision when it comes to the reform bill is paramount. You need to have supervisors on duty more often and as much as you possibly can. We did not have enough supervisors to go around to cover these shifts. So we did need to promote somebody from officer to patrol. So we have an increase there to cover that. And as many of you probably know, Mike Romano, one of my sergeants, is battling leukemia right now. And so a few months ago, the select board gave us permission to essentially replace him, to start a hiring process, to put somebody back into that slot. And the reason for that is, one of the reasons for that is located within this chart here. This is really boilerplate. This is not super detailed. It's something that I wanted to show you all, just to kind of give you an idea of where this town is headed. Okay. We reached out to Northampton, Amherst, and South Hadley to just gather basic data. Please don't look at this as if it's, really, really drilling down into the numbers. It's real basic data. Well, we got a head count of the amount of officers they have. We got a total of the incidents they have, a total of their arrests, a total of their citations, which, as you know, in Hadley, traffic is huge for us. We get traffic complaints daily. To slow people down, people running stop signs, gridlock on Route 9. We have accidents, and then we just have general calls for service, which includes all of this stuff all together. And then we averaged it based upon the head count for each of those officers. And you'll see, just like I said, 20,000-foot view, you'll see that a Hadley officer, has higher numbers than every other department in every category, with the exception of Northampton incidents, having the most at 45 incidents per officer per year. If you look at general calls for service per officer, a Hadley officer is responding to basically twice as many calls than an average officer in any of those other police departments. I say that to essentially kind of paint the picture for you that this town is getting busy. It's getting busier and busier every day. And I know that the finance committee and the select board have been very good to us and taken care of us and allowed us to add officers when we have made the case for it. This is just, we're 20 years behind. We were 20 years behind when I took over. And again, we would be in way worse situation if you all hadn't taken such great care of us. But I'm just trying to kind of show you what the facts are. If you scroll down just a little bit more, these are some of our more sensitive calls. We've also added about 1.5 mental health clinicians that are embedded with our police officers because of that next set of statistics. We started collecting mental health call data in 2020. Obviously, you can see there's very limited numbers of them in 2020. 2021 and 2022, once we really got swinging with the pandemic, we saw a 250% increase. And in 2023, we are currently tracking to reach and surpass that number. We don't have the clinicians that we have are paid for on a grant, which we share with the city of East Hampton, but they are not here all the time, and our officers still have to respond to these types of calls. And again, they are extraordinarily sensitive. They require a lot more training. Each one of our officers is certified in crisis intervention. We're trying to get 100% training in every officer to be trained in crisis intervention training in the event that our clinician is not available. These are things that we never had to do before. And so we're really kind of, working towards that goal. Now, bear in mind that that box just above that covers statistics on basically a patrol level. Okay, administratively, we have added responsibilities that have increased because of police reform and because we're actually working towards accreditation still. So our administrators, of which there's only 3 of us, myself and the 2 lieutenants, we handle accreditation management, post-certification management, grant writing, which we bring in approximately $150,000 annually. We handle internal affairs investigations, court management, which again brings thousands in revenue for the town. Scheduling for details, shifts, court details, again, brings in thousands of dollars with administrative fees annually. Field training, records requests, cell building compliance, sex offender registry administration, firearms licensing, of which we now also have to more extensively do inspections on places in town, both private and public, which sell firearms and ammunition. So that's something else we have to take care of. And so, the administrative load on this department is just as heavy as other agencies. None of that changes. And we have less people doing those jobs. So pre-COVID, I think there's probably only 2 people on the finance committee. I think maybe Paul and Amy were the only 2 on the finance committee at the time. But pre-COVID, we were about this close to being approved for two new police officers based upon what was happening in 2020. Since then, police reform post came into play. We had to switch gears really quickly. And our last, obviously we went through COVID and didn't add any people. The budgets were frozen because of COVID. So last year was the time that we got another officer, and we had to completely change gears and ask for an administrative person. Amy stood up at town meeting and advocated for us, and we added that lieutenant position to help us with all this administrative load. But just to give you an idea of where, where things are going, we have a school resource officer that we've had for several years. Obviously, we've had the position for several years, not the person. And we have a detective right now. Both of those positions are doing double duty. They are patrol officers and they are a detective. Our detective, I popped into her office today and I looked at her board with her active investigations on it. And I took a screenshot. I took a picture of it really quick. And she currently has an active sexual assault that she's investigating, an adult sexual assault. She's in a preliminary investigation for a child sexual assault. She's investigating an embezzlement crime. She has continuously been investigating our hit and run with our white van. She just recently closed a secret sexual surveillance and upskirting call, which had a massive amount of child pornography involved in it. She just closed a large theft ring with about $20,000 worth of items stolen. And she just closed and pushed off to the DA's office our shooting from New Year's Eve. That detective responds to calls. She goes to car accidents. She goes out and runs radar to slow people down in neighborhoods at the same time of investigating all of those things. I don't know that any other police department would have only one detective investigating all those cases, never mind a detective that is also doing other jobs. So that's my spiel on the increases to the wage lines. And why we really need to kind of focus on these things and why we need to continue to adapt and law enforcement is changing every day. That's the spiel on the increases to the wage lines. There is one other line, the cruiser line, which I consider a significant increase that I can jump to right now, unless you want me to pause and ask questions about the wage stuff. But if I do the cruiser, then I'm done with the police budget. Your call.
I would go to cruisers. That's why.
Okay. So Linda, can you pop the PowerPoint up and just find the page that looks like this cruiser replacement? Oh, is that backwards? Wow, that's weird. Cruiser replacement dates. Yep, perfect.
Do you know which slide it is, number?
That one, the one you just passed.
Number 4.
Right there. Yep, perfect. Okay.
Let me get that a little bigger. Okay.
I want to, this is going to feel weird saying this, but I kind of want to give credit to Carolyn and Linda on their review of the budget. And I'm doing it because I want the finance committee to have faith that the multiple steps that we go through as department heads with our budget proposals is robust, and it really does work. We have to essentially get through 3 different hurdles, and I hope the folks in town understand that the system that you all have set up is a good system. We have to work hard to get what we need. Great questions are asked, and I can tell you that I have been chief for 8 years in this town, and this is the first year that my budget has been adjusted. And it was essentially adjusted by a fairly new town administrator and a brand new finance director. So I just want to make mention of that they're not afraid to say no and tell you where you need to make some adjustments. And so with that, I will tell you about the 2 adjustments that they made. One adjustment is with the wage line. I'm not sure how you want to handle it, but the wage line, we have the officer who's out with leukemia. He is going to be out for more than a year. The select board gave us permission to replace that individual, but it doesn't absolve us of the responsibility to continue to pay his salary so long as he has accrued leave to pay for it. The suggestion was made that money be put into a free cash account, a side account, or something like that. And Linda, I'm not doing this justice, or Carolyn. I don't really know how to explain it, but I just want the finance committee to understand that that wage line is missing an entire police officer's salary for the purposes of moving it elsewhere. So that is number one. Number two is the cruiser situation. Linda, if you just jump back one slide, I just want you all to focus on the red numbers there. As many of you know, our cruiser purchase was done annually, one per year for the last several years through capital. When we hit COVID, we realized that there was not enough money to go around for everybody. And so we decided that at least for a period of time, we would begin leasing cars to reduce our annual payment to about $15,000 a year per car. If you look at that cruiser situation right there, you will see that the current cruiser that is on order right now is replacing a car that's already gone. It's that old. The parentheses in the next one, cruiser 41, that is the cruiser that was reduced. That was what was adjusted by Carolyn and Linda. So that car, that cruiser, that lease is not happening. That was what was cut from the budget. So you see that car has 103,000 miles on it. And so what you're looking at here is essentially everything is going to get shifted down by at least one. And even if I go to capital and ask for a car, we're still going to be slightly behind. Cruiser 39 has 140,000 miles on it when we made this PowerPoint, and it probably is at 145 now. And Cruiser 28 probably has about $110, maybe 115,000 miles on it, something like that. So that's just to give you a little bit of background as to why we started leasing cars. I was asking for another lease within this budget. And again, they did their due diligence and they reduced that cruiser. What the increase that you are seeing is to cover the car that we need to purchase. We need to pay for the current lease. So that's one of the 15,000. And then we need another car. So that's a second lease right there. So that's what's in that line item right there. And I hope to be able to request a third cruiser in capital at some point in October, November, whenever we have town meeting. So those are your larger increases. Those are the reasons behind it. I stand ready for questions.
I guess I'm a little confused. I'm sorry if I might make you go over this again. But I thought we were on the right page. We were buying one cruiser every year out of capital for a while. And then we were looking at one point to skip 1 year because of the COVID. We didn't end up skipping a year. Instead, we switched it to leasing. And then we started leasing, but we were still leasing one cruiser every year.
Yeah, well, I think the original plan wasn't to skip 1 year. I think it was to switch over altogether to leasing and then reevaluate at some point in the future. So what we did was we only leased one car. I'm requesting the second lease because we're behind. And then I think the suggestion from Carolyn and Linda is to go back to capital after this budget, but I don't know how the future looks.
Okay, so we're thinking about going maybe back to capital instead of leasing down the road. But for now, we have been on track and we have not missed a year, have we? We have not missed a year. We've
technically
had a new vehicle every year, right?
Technically we are behind by a year. That's not necessarily the fault of budgetary issues. It's because of supply chain issues. They had no cars for us, so we are behind. So we fell behind because of what was going on with everything else. We ordered a car and they basically told us 14 months. It's just the way that it goes, but it's not because of budget.
So that-
It's the lead time, Amy, that we've thrown him off by. I think that's the biggest hit, is that without the commitment in the budget, I'm telling him to wait till fall. That means he can't even order it until we have the authorization from the town. The original idea in that first year was that $15,000 was less than $65,000.
Yeah.
And that's how tight things were. And going into the second year, 30,000 was still less than,
Right.
than that.
They're
Now
about
we-
75 now.
Right. Right. And now as the years go by, your 15 becomes 30, becomes 45, becomes, and you're still just leasing. And we thought maybe this, and we honestly haven't found, the leasing paperwork is complex, although we do get it through it each year. The interest, the expense of it is not less than borrowing. And we just thought it was time to make that move. It's a call. It could go either way, but just to have a permanent leasing didn't seem to have this benefit, that the obvious benefit that did the first year or two. So we're more in a balancing act now. It still could go either way, but that's just the judgment call that we made.
In terms of budget, have we always budgeted a car every year?
So the cruiser line used to be an annual line item when Chief Huckowitz was here, and then right around the point where we had an acting chief, somewhere around I think 2012, 2013, it stopped being a line item and it went into capital for every year after that. And I had started, arguing with David Nixon about halfway through my 8 years here, maybe 4 years ago, to put it back into the budget as a line item. But he wanted to continue to put it into capital. So we used to have it. The short answer is we used to have it and it was removed.
I guess to Amy's question, I know physically we haven't replaced a car every year, but have we budgeted for either a lease or a car every year?
Yes, we went through COVID okay, with the exception of the delay on getting the car. So yes.
So that car that's been delayed, it's already been kind of paid for.
Yep.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we
So
still
we're
haven't
not
even-
asking.
We still
this
haven't
isn't
even
asking
received
for
it
that.
yet. Right.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to. I think that was what I was getting a little confused on.
So
And how many cars do we typically have on, or how many cars do?
So the cars that you see on that list right there are the cars that we have. So we have about 4 other cars that we consider aged out cars, but we use for Route 9 details because the Mass DOT requires cruisers on the road. They are basically boxes on wheels that have lights on top. They are unusable as actual police cars. So what you're looking at on the screen are our usable patrol vehicles.
That's about 11, it looks like.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just trying to understand. We have about 15 officers now, and how many officers are typically on at any given time?
We generally have between 2 and 3 officers on at every shift
Okay.
when we're at
So-
full staffing.
So I'm just trying to understand, is having 11, is that part of load management of the cars, just so that, one's in service or one's whatever?
That's exactly right. And it's also to try to not have to replace an entire fleet of cruisers all at the same time. I'll give you an example. Holyoke replaces several of their cars all at the same time. They buy 5-6 cars. And when they're all, when they're all beat down and worn out, they have to replace them. You're talking about $1 million. So what we do is we spread the load out and we spread them around, and we have officers share and try to spread the mileage out as best we can. We have and I know Scott isn't here, the DPW director, but we have I would say one of the best vehicle maintenance programs around. Our vehicle maintenance program is actually accreditation level maintenance. That's the reason that we can get this many miles out of our cruisers. 140,000 miles, as you can see on Cruiser 39, is absolutely unheard of for a police vehicle. But we are still using it as a patrol vehicle, and we're still, got it running and it's working well and all of that. So that's a testament to our maintenance plan. But yes, to answer your question, we spread the load out as much as we possibly can to keep them running as long as we can.
And in terms of, is there like a best practice for, and ideally, how many officers, we have 15, are those filled positions or those positions that we're shooting for?
No, we're down one officer right now. I just had a resignation a week ago. So all of the rest of our positions are filled. Obviously, my sergeant is out right now for a significant period of time. But we are essentially as close to full staffing as we've been for a long time.
So you have really, obviously the one officer that's ill, but 14 kind of ready and able officers.
Yeah.
Okay. And then is there kind of like a rule of thumb in the police in terms of, or in operations in terms of how many for a police force the size of 15, how many cars should we have?
No,
I'm just curious.
No, not that I'm aware of. Every
Okay.
department runs differently. Some departments buy cruisers outright. Some of them lease them. Some of them have, some of them run their cars 24 hours a day. Some of them do what we do, which is spread the load out. It's all a matter of how they decide to run. Just to give you an example, Northampton usually gets rid of their cruisers at about 80,000 miles.
So Cruiser 39 is going to be retired at the end of this year or mid next year. Is that roughly?
Maybe it depends on whether or not we can effectively replace it.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Those are all my questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, just strategically, should we be ordering car just during this period? I mean, I know how long it's taken, buying a new car today does take a year. I mean, there's some vehicles you can't get for even longer. Should we be accelerating into this budget vehicles for the 2 vehicles so that we can get them on order? I mean, this will solve itself eventually, but it may not be for another year or so.
Yeah. That's a good question, Paul. I mean, we're very friendly with the place that we order cruisers from. And so my lieutenant has the next car that's located in this budget right now. They have them kind of holding it off for us so long as our budget gets approved. So we are kind of ahead of the game, but we're under the table ahead of the game, if you know what I mean. So we're doing the best we can with that.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
okay, so if I could just ask you one more question regarding the your officer that's ill. So from what I understand, if I have this right, we have it's not, let's talk about not the person, but the position. Okay, so you have the 15. Let's pretend that other gentleman hasn't given a notice. Okay, so say you have all 15. You have someone that was sick, but you got permission for someone as a temporary to fill in. So when the officer comes back, that position for a while you'll have 2, but when someone leaves, that position will not be filled because then you still have the 15.
Are you asking me?
Is that how that's working?
That wasn't the way that I had it in my head. No, what I had in my head was that when Mike Romano comes back, we would be +1.
Okay, but we would be plus, so when he comes back, we have an extra position. So
Yes.
How are we funding that extra position? So now we are ahead 1.
Yes, so that's part of the budget increase. That's in there.
Right.
So the only part that's not in there is Mike Romano's salary. And that was based upon a decision Carolyn and Linda made, and I can't, really explain that as well as they can.
I'm
So
happy.
that extra person is in the budget, so that number is there.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through that, Amy?
Yeah, so I
So-
think I kind of understand. I was kind of confused at first how you're doing it, but you're just actually, instead of making that a temporary thing, it sounds to me like you just trying to make it a permanent thing so that when he does come back, you still are, that's permanent. So this
Yes,
is like you're turning the thing from a temporary to a permanent. So that makes sense to me as far as your budget goes. So now I'm really confused on how Linda budget is gonna be having that extra money over somewhere else.
Right, and I'm not sure I was following all that. So I'll tell you what we did and then or in discussions. So this is what our concern is that you've got a budget for the police department that was up, let me see, the increase was going up $200,000, but that wasn't really a $200,000 increase to the operations of the police department because almost half of that was on an officer who was not able to work at that time. So by bringing that outside of the budget, the approved budget, I don't know if it's down, if it's can show that the approved budget there, was for the replacement officer and all the other operations of the budget that would be ongoing during 24 and that we would provide separately in an article. Now at the time, and I'm still not, at the time I was hoping this other trust fund, this employee fund that I want funded by the article would also cover this officer. There's a certain benefit to keeping the privacy of individuals by having it come out of a fund like that. Now, I think privacy is shot at this time, and I think it's the officer has not minded his name being out there and discussed. I just wasn't sure. Now, I didn't think when he came back, I don't know, and I'm still not sure I'm following. So he would come back and step into the position again, and you'd be keeping the replacement officer.
yeah, I
But
mean,
but we're really talking about 25 pretty much at that point.
you're exactly correct. So you're talking
Okay.
about FY25. Mike is not going to be back within the next budget cycle. He is going to be out for more than a year, starting in May or June when his transplant takes place. He's been out for months and months already. So the reason that the new person is in FY24 is because he is replacing Mike Romano for the entire year. So FY25 will be the
Right.
discussion as to whether or not that person,
Right.
we keep that person.
Right.
And that's also if we don't have, we're not going to have people leaving. That's it. That's assuming that right now the way the state of we're having in terms of our ability to keep certain officers. So
Yep.
the
That's it.
fact is that
Yeah,
there's no. We're saying we're talking about almost 2 years ahead, but the reality is that there's going to be some
Yeah.
people that they're going to leave.
That's
I haven't made it through a fiscal year. I would say in the last 4 years that I haven't been able to, unfortunately, turn money back out of my full-time line because it wasn't spent because somebody left and it took so long to replace them. So again, I just had a person leave at middle of March. So you're going to have 3.5 months of a full-time salary come back in free cash because I'm never going to get somebody hired. And even if I do, you got 2 weeks notice or whatever it is, we're looking at a person. We have there's a CO, a female corrections officer who grew up in Hadley, who lives in Texas right now and wants to move back to Hadley. She's basically number one on our list to hire. It's going to take a month or two for her to quit and move her whole family here and all that. So yeah, Shardul, that's exactly the point.
Right. So we were counting on it, or not counting on, but expecting that there would be a certain attrition that would compensate. Now, I understand that there are different levels though. Mike, you're hiring at a different level position. So
Yeah.
losing an officer in one position does not necessarily mean they don't need to be replaced.
Right.
But
So,
just so I understand it right, it's still, you had 15. One of the 15 is out. So you are looking to replace, so that's now, and that person will not go away no matter what. So you have 16 with one out. So I mean, only 15 working, but 16 positions. So that officer, just to say, if that officer decided, oh, it's not going to work out for him because it's just not, and he decides not to come back, you're going to refill that position. Because I don't want to talk people, I want to talk positions.
Yeah.
You're going to
I
refill
think-
that position, right?
Yeah, I think Amy, for over here, basically that Officer Romano is no longer on the police budget. So he's not on this budget anymore. He's on a special budget just for him. So right now, this budget is for 15 officers, and he's essentially a special, special
Yeah.
case at this point.
Which I get, but that my question is, should that be? When I just trying to understand it, and I kind of got it, but my thought is he was special because I didn't realize that you had made that temporary as to a permanent. So now that it is permanent, my thought is if that officer, no matter what, whether he comes back or he decides not to come back or whatever, you are still refilling the position. So no matter what, eventually that numbers are coming back into the regular budget.
Well,
If he doesn't come back, they're not. If he decides to retire, they're not filling that position because
They're not?
they're at 15. So they're right now he's if he decides to come back, then it's a different issue. Then
for
there has to-
FY, for
Yeah.
FY24, exactly.
Yeah, but if he decides not to come back, that's not an open position because technically there's no more open right now. With him being on some other line item somewhere else, that opens up that position for the police on the police force.
and I'd have to say, going into 25, the likelihood that he would be, all else being equal, hiring another officer going into 25 is very high. We're probably just catching up to where he would have been, where he would have wanted to be at
Yeah.
that point. So I think that's up for a fresh discussion almost a year from now then about
And
getting
the fact
another
is-
position.
And the fact is that based on the activity that Officer Mason had presented, the reality in terms of good practice, we're probably understaffed at
Yeah.
this moment. Meaning we're already at a level where we're stressing out the force to a certain degree, and the fact is that it hurts our ability to again retain and attract people long term because we're always going to have that attrition or that revolving door that's inherent in unfortunately in the new police force of today.
It's a good point.
I want to say too, I have had second thoughts about whether we're handling that, the sick leave correct, the way we want to handle it. Because as I said earlier, when we were talking about the HR budget, why aren't we including it in the budget, or why are we still including it in the budget when we're voting it? Is because that's an article, it would have to be voted separately. The same is true of the 80,000 that we need in this officer's separate funding. It needs to be voted, and it will be after the budget. And I think I was thinking at the time, well, we'll fix it in the fall if anything goes wrong there. I don't know if we want to have this back in the budget at this point and not take that chance or not have to worry about handling it again in the fall. We certainly don't want to put anyone in an uncomfortable position, but it's hard when you're balancing an entire budget and try and make these calls and not have the budget go up, over $1 million. So I'm very interested in your opinions on this, and maybe next week when we're trying to pull it all together, and we'll show you the cash articles that we've been discussing that relate to the budget, and maybe you do want to pull that in, or maybe you want to take the HR one and put that in the outside budget article too. It's just a balancing act.
Yeah,
I guess what's the question exactly? Like, what do you ask? I'm just trying to understand your question.
Okay, the 80,000 isn't directed to a fund that exists right now, Shardul. We're talking about an article that will be at town meeting to set up a fund to pay these out of free cash. To
So
pay.
you're talking about, so your question is what department? this
Do we
line
want to
item-
put it, would you rather have that? Should we just add it to the budget because we know we're going to spend the funds? Should we just put it back in the police officer's budget, the police department budget this
Yeah,
year?
honestly, I think that, I think that the fact that it was, it was a little bit confusing as Amy, it took me a little bit to get it. And
Yep.
and Amy, it's kind of like,
Either way, it's confusing,
It's paid
Shardul.
sick leave, but he's still an officer. Even though you're not treating him as an officer, for the purpose of this budget, he's a police officer. Ideally,
Absolutely.
he should be
Money-
on this, and maybe we should have some type of new different line item that says leave, of some kind. I'm guessing that. I don't know if that's the normal thing, but
Yeah.
me
It's all
personally,
coming out. Yeah.
The money's been
should-
appropriated for the force, so it would make sense to have it stay within that. And if, who's to say what's going to happen with it a couple of years down the road? But at this point, the money's been appropriated for that position. Kind of makes sense that it still remains within the 210 budget.
Yeah, I am anxious to get this extra fund started for paying employees, and it would include the absence, the retirement benefits, and it includes something like this. But I may be without
Well, we
having
should
the
have a
fund,
policy.
without having the fund already in place, and without having, and I'm a little concerned that if it fails, we don't have it provided for. So I would actually like to see it back in the budget too. At this point, I have had second thoughts, unless we had that article approved first. I know Susan's.
But it should be also a policy, meaning it should be something that, whether it's in our handbook or somewhere,
Right.
in our benefits laid out exactly how.
Yeah.
If
Once-
we're treating this as a, meaning I get the heart of it and is there. I think nobody's disputing that.
Oh, no,
I
not
think
at all.
It's just a matter of, you're doing a special provision and there's nothing that says that we could even do this.
We can do it. We can do it, but I don't think there'll be a problem going forward. If we get this fund set up in the spring annual town meeting, this won't be an issue the next time. We'll just get that article funded.
But
going
again,
forward.
this fund doesn't exist.
It doesn't
right?
exist yet. No, the
Right.
article's going on for annual town meeting. That's the issue that I'm having now.
That's my point, is that
Yeah.
this provision doesn't currently exist. It will
Yeah.
exist.
Yeah, no, I might have jumped the gun on this. No, you
Right.
have a point.
Yeah, it's just a matter of making sure that in HR, we're following HR policies and all these other things that
Mhm.
we don't want to create precedent for doing stuff that is not really set up yet, I guess.
So Sue had her hand up. Sue, did you want to add something?
Okay. Sorry, had to unmute. I was just thinking that the new employee handbook had the kind of sick time sharing. And I know a number of people who have already contacted Mike Mason about sharing sick time hours to help fund this for Mike. So I just, I don't want to throw more irons in the fire, but
Right.
I think
I would say, I don't think, Susan, it would change the amount that we would still have to allocate for it.
no, you're right. However, well, in some respects, well, no, it wouldn't. You're right, Linda.
The only way that it would change the amount itself is if we don't have enough for him to continue to use any of that sick time before he's ready to come back. So let's say we gather up, all of his accrued leave and anything anybody donates, and we come up with 6 months and he's out for another 8. That's 8 months of wages. He's going to have to file for long-term disability, and that's 8 months of wages that we won't have to come up with. We can't pay him with no accrued leave. So that's the dicey thing about this. And granted, it's dicey for the budget, but also for Mike himself.
Yeah. And well, the irony
Absolutely.
is I was trying to do this to not call attention to him, and now we've had a long discussion about it. So,
That's okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't mind. I gotta go we're doing a celebrity bartender fundraising at Arizona Pizza in April. So everybody come out and I'll pour you a beer.
Yay.
He'll be sitting there on the bar. He's not shy right now.
good.
So,
So, okay,
yeah.
so that was great.
Yeah.
At first it was just confusing
Yeah.
about, because in some cases I thought you were getting new people and I had other people say, no, it's not new. So I was just very confused about the whole thing.
Completely understandable. I apologize. I know it was not only lengthy, but I practiced it, and I knew there was going to be confusing parts of it because it's something that we've never done before. So my apologies.
No worries.
Do you want me to just move on to dispatch? That one's going to take 2 seconds.
Yeah, but I wanted to say one other thing, and you
Yeah.
talk about your officer where she has a full plate, and I just wanted to add, not only does she do all that, she's always at every basketball game, and it's been wonderful.
Yep. I'm telling you, I have it took up about 8 years to get the department that we want here in Hadley, but we have some amazing people that love the community that they work in. I am so psyched, and that's one of the reasons why we got to keep them. We got to keep as many of them as we can.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one question? I don't want to be legal at this point, but if this was added to the budget, right? If that item was added back, we would vote on it and it would be approved and there would be no need for town vote, right?
There wouldn't be no need to put it into an article, correct? They would just vote on the budget as a whole.
And that increase would be the increase would be on, we would still need an article for the increase, or we don't?
Nope, this budget is set. The only thing to put back into it would be Mike Romano's salary, and then it's all one piece.
Okay, so we're decided, I just want to make sure, we decided on putting it back in here.
Well, we'll go
Decisions
over
are
that
next week.
the next
Okay.
meeting, we'll go over, like, right now, we'll listen to everyone ask a lot of questions, and then I think we're gonna get into the weeds of that and say, let's talk about that some more, and let's say, as a group, we kind of think we should do it that way,
Yeah.
so and then we'll vote on things.
Yeah.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah, that one's above my pay grade, Shardul, so I'm the talker, so. Okay, so really quick, dispatch. You have, basically you have one section of significant, what I would call significant increases. As I mentioned before, police and dispatch, their contracts match up. So they renegotiated their contracts as well. So your increases in your wage lines are going to be for full-time, overtime, and training, just like with the police. And the other increase, the other piece that bumps the increase up a little bit is the adding of an additional full-time dispatcher. As you know, that box that I showed you earlier with the call volume, the dispatchers are the ones that take those calls before the officers go out on them. So you can see the increase in call volume, and we are preparing currently for to be handling what's called emergency medical dispatch. When the fire chief's ambulance comes online, we have already given notice to the dispatchers that they will be performing what's called EMD dispatching, and essentially the easiest way to explain it is talking someone through CPR over the phone or first responder type things over the phone. That is something that a dispatcher can never take their attention away from when they're doing. So what we have been trying to do is building this communication center We've been trying to get, we have 2 dispatch stations in our dispatch center. We've been trying to get 2 dispatchers on duty as much as we possibly can. We write a 911 grant every single year in which we get anywhere between 10 and I think one year we got up to $17,000 to essentially put more dispatchers on duty at a time. But it doesn't cover remotely what we need to cover an entire year. So what I have done for this budget is we are shifting money from our part-time line. These are people who our part-time dispatchers are people who will come in and be that second dispatcher. We're shifting money from there and moving it into the full-time line. Now I can't cover the entirety of that dispatch salary, but I can cover about I'd say $19,000-$20,000 of it. And so that will certainly help mitigate that increase. But those are where your significant increases are coming from and why we need them. So as I mentioned, contractual stuff and then the additional dispatcher, but we are able to kind of take about half that person's salary from within our own budget. We will use part-timers less and use our full-timers more, putting another person out there, thus increasing the amount of people who are on duty. And that's it.
Oops.
Thank you.
Okay.
Never any
Any other-
questions on dispatch, Amy? How come?
Well, I think
No,
I
I didn't mean
listened
to
to,
get going.
I was gonna do that, and I had to think about exactly what you said, because it's hard to understand because you have the contracts. What is the new person's
Yep.
cost to the town versus what is it? So everything's all lumped together. So I was
Yeah.
trying to listen.
So what I can tell you is my estimate for a step 1 new dispatcher is 46,000.
Okay,
So if you take 46,000 out of that full-time employee line, that'll give you a ballpark of what the increases were for the contract.
okay. That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. And that's it. That's all I have. If nobody has any more questions, and I'm happy to be at future meetings.
I do have another question. I just thought of it. Okay, so how does that dispatch, because we've been talking about ambulance, is that caused a lot by the ambulance? Is that in anticipation of doing more with the ambulance?
It's in anticipation of having to do the EMD. We know we don't get a lot of those calls that they're going to have to be doing the CPR stuff. It's I would say it's a combination of call volume increase and preparing to make sure that we can handle the EMD task that these dispatchers are going to have to do. Because if, let's just say somebody calls and they have, that somebody has dropped and they need to talk them through CPR. That dispatcher is shut down for until people arrive on scene. They are talking that person through CPR. So the other phone calls that are coming in, the officers on the radio, the fire department on the radio, all that needs to be handled by somebody else. So that's what the second person is for. Statistically speaking, not a ton of those, but it is a part of it. So yes, the ambulance is a part of the reason.
So
How is the second call handled nowadays?
Oh,
If you only have one person there, what happens to when the phone rings?
it's chaos is what it is. It's chaos. It's absolute chaos. I'll give you an example. Last summer we had the shooting at Walmart, the double shooting that happened in the bathroom of Walmart there. We had one dispatcher on duty, which is generally what we have. And our dispatcher spent after the officers had captured the suspects and provided aid to the victims, and things started to quiet down, our dispatcher spent the next 2 hours calling people back that she did not get a chance to answer the phone for. And some of those people were actually hiding in Walmart still because they thought there was an active shooter in the store. That's not how you want to handle emergencies. So, Andy, to answer your question, it can be a really bad situation if one dispatcher is, and it takes next to nothing to overwhelm a single dispatcher.
It doesn't bump to a not like state police if you can't, if you are overwhelmed?
So your 911 calls will roll over if you don't answer them. They will go over to East Hampton, but then East Hampton PD will just call us and say, you just got a 911 call for a shooting in Walmart. So you're still doing the same work.
Yeah.
But the regular phone lines don't roll to anybody. The radios don't roll to anybody. It is our responsibility to handle it. So what you have to do is multitask as best you can, and then work backwards. So when you have two people on more often, you're better off.
Is there any of the police or fire that can ever help if they're in the office?
If they are in the office, usually on day shift, if something crazy happens, we're in good shape. Things like that generally happen on evening or midnight shift, and all of your firefighters, police, and all them are out on the call while everything's still coming in.
And how does that handle with dispatch if you are getting, so say something bad is happening in Amherst and we're getting calls because of mutual aid? Does that add to us now? I mean, is that going through our dispatch too?
If Amherst is calling us for mutual aid, generally it'll just be phone calls, which is fairly easy to handle. And then our dispatch will handle our officers' radio traffic, but they won't have to handle anything that from the Amherst dispatch or the Amherst officers.
Oh, okay.
So Amy, you asked about whether this was impacted by ambulance. I think that's something we're just going to, we've talked about it very briefly. It's very preliminary, but it's something worth revisiting as things get underway to see if there is if it would be appropriate to allocate something back over to the ambulance revenue once they get revenue. So we'll keep an eye on that. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief.
All right. So I guess we're all set unless anyone else has any more questions. No? Thank you. We always have lots of questions for you.
I love it. I love questions. I never mind it. I apologize. I was really long this year, longer than normal. So, all the new finance people, don't quit. I'm not usually that doesn't usually take that long.
Oh, he always has a presentation for us. I mean, he doesn't go by line items. Michael always has something nice that we can look at. He always, so when I saw him, I'm like, well, where's the presentation? Because I'm expecting something.
This one, you'll like this one. It's got some hyperlinks. You can read extra paperwork, extra articles, and everything.
Oh yeah, I kept them all, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the last budget lines will be legal accounting.
This is part of your interest in getting through as much as we could before next week's budget. So you'll have as much time as possible to wrap up to wrap things up. So we pushed ahead accounting and legal. I'll get there. And that would leave for next year. That would leave for next week just the 190, which is the town buildings, because Jennifer couldn't be here tonight, and the regular select board budget. So let's see, accounting is a little bit forward. We'll go to accounting first.
On 26.
Page 26, yes. Okay. Carolyn.
All right. So for those of you who may not know, we do outsource for accounting. We outsource with, they're called Marcus now. They were Melanson. We've actually worked with that company for many years, but they've been doing accounting I don't know, Linda, how many, 5, 6 years?
That's about right.
With some, yeah, that we've had some different.
Yeah, I
people.
think we switched over in 20, so they're not that long. We've outsourced for probably 7 or 8 years. But, and we had a different accountant when we were out on COVID. So later on in 20, and we lost them over that summer. So probably fall of 20. So we're coming up on almost 3 years with Melanson. They weren't new to us though, because Melanson were our auditors for many years.
Yeah.
They can't be our auditors once they're our accountants.
So for those of you who were here last year and the year before, we have attempted to hire in-house, but like many other positions in the municipal world, you cannot find an accountant. They're poaching off. The new term for all positions is poaching off of other municipalities, and they are just can't get them. So we've been outsourcing with Melanson, and this year they came. Not only did they were bought out by a much larger, I think it's a national company who does multiple areas of finance. But I think it was a good move for them. They had asked for a $5,000 increase this year, and I was able to talk with them and just share number of hours that we get based on the number that they were proposing. So today I did get notified that they are going to level fund us. So that's good. But we do have a really good relationship with them, and they are out here on a monthly basis. So right now, I think we're very happy with the services. So do you have any other questions with accounting? The software maintenance is what Linda uses for Vadar and the accountant as well. And there's other employees that use it. And the rest of it is just office supplies and
our auditor.
And the auditor. That has to be done every year.
And that's Powers and Sullivan now. When they're just this week wrapping up the 22 audit, FY22.
Any questions with that?
No, it's not so much fun. It's interesting to talk about.
I think it's fun.
Sorry, Linda.
Maybe legal will be more fun for you, but then we can move. Then we can move
I
on to the real fun one, because we'll help you through Parks and Rec. There's the fun department. But
Oh yeah, there you go.
there you go, Carolyn. Here's the fun one.
So legal last year, after over 20 years, we did go out to bid for proposals for town council, and we went with Mead, Talleyrand and Costa. And so it's broken down here into litigation and town council services. What we did find about four months into it is that I was getting concerned what the monthly cost was going to be, and Lisa, who is Lisa Mead, who's one of the owners, could sense my hesitancy about reaching out to them for certain things, and she really didn't like that. So what she had offered and discussed doing a flat fee for general town council. Litigation is still outside that, and labor is. And one of the reasons, so labor we're going to have two bills, one for labor, one for general town council. So that's when planning board calls. That's when I have just general questions. It could be conservation. It could be it's really anything that's not related to labor or litigation. And so labor, we are keeping that separate. Mead felt that was better to keep it separate per hour, because we do have 2 new unions starting this year. So I'm especially with a new union, I want to use their labor council. I have found them to be fair. I've checked every invoice. A couple times we had a South Hadley, because they just took on South Hadley. This happens with anything that we share, any type of vendors with South Hadley. So they've been very good. I check it and I'm not seeing any errors at all. So we're pleased with them right now. And a lot of things have been coming up lately where I'm spending a lot of time with some things, either events that are happening or some other resident related things that we're having to reach out to them a lot. And it is a great feeling to just be able to call them and not worry about the hourly rate. But I will definitely be keeping an eye on that throughout the year to see how we're doing with that.
So I have a question with that. So I see the line item for litigation. I see the line item for town council. I don't see labor? Where you said that's separate, but where is it?
So it is the cost of the labor per hour is combined with the regular general town council services. That is a flat fee.
Oh, it's all
It's
in
one.
that.
Yes,
They bill you separately, but it's all
I
in
get-
that
I get one bill.
36,000.
Yes, I get one bill, but 3 different categories.
Thank you.
And legal notices, that's just your general legal notices that we have to do that's anything related to legal services. And the legal subscriptions. What are the legal I'm sorry, if it's those law books, we've been trying to get rid of those.
Oh, but look back a couple years, Carolyn, we did.
Yeah, we did, but it looks like it was 200. So
So there are still some publications I think that are useful to come through. 200 isn't much. Yeah, I think, the 3,600 was were the law books being updated. That was.
They're all online. I'm actually using mine for a computer stand. So. Any questions?
All right.
No.
No, I'm good.
All right. So Amy realized this afternoon when I said, and then we'll be all done. She said, I don't think we ever met with Park and Rec. They were scheduled, but didn't come in that day. And I think you're all aware that Greg is leaving Park and Rec. In fact, this is his last week. So he will not be rescheduling with you. So we took a look at it this afternoon. I'm sorry, it's on page 47. If I scroll too fast, it just gets a little crazy. So I have to scroll through. Page 47. There we are. When Carolyn and I took a look at it, we said, what's level funded? This will be easy. So we did have him in, Carolyn, when we first started, and it's not that they're not increasing expenses, it's that the increases in expenses are coming out of the programs they're running, and much of Park and Rec is running out of revolving funds. So they take in fees for a program and they spend the program fees out of that. The actual salaries and all the expenses related to running the department are kept in the regular budget. So, and we were able to level fund that.
They're interviewing for candidates right now as we speak.
So my suggestion not only would be, do you take out the COLA? Because I mean, I'm just saying because you're not doing an increase for someone that didn't start yet.
So we could take out the COLA. My only input would be, it's an extremely, extremely low salary. So, that's my only concern. We absolutely could take it out. This isn't based on any really a grade or anything, because we are having a compensation study done. We're actually starting April 12th. And that's going to take about 4 months. So we'll know exactly what that salary should be. I am concerned about getting a good candidate. So that would be my only thought is if we could keep it at that 51,683. It's a little bit higher. It's only it's $1,000.
The success of this program really does ride on that position.
Yeah.
We've seen ups and downs over the years. That is such a key position, and
it's always been tight budget there too. So
Always.
it has.
I see let's see, the custodial is going to 0. Is that because they no longer they end everything at 8:30 now?
I think Greg just hasn't had to use the custodial for his programs. They've got a great relationship with the schools.
Yeah, I think that they ended it. The long story. I'm not going to go into a history lesson there, but they.
I know, Andy.
But
we never
yeah,
in the first place.
having it end and the custodians there and the school not charging the program are great things. certainly thanks to the school for helping work on that
Right.
line.
And if there is something that he needs to pay, again, it will come out of the program that's running there.
Mhm.
So, if they've used up something or have to get balls or something for the, I don't know, pickleball, if that's ball, that they buy everything that they need for it, and yes, they do have a very good working relationship, and hopefully our next coordinator will as well.
Well, I see we increased the school use expense by a
Mm,
little.
You know what I did? We combined those two lines, Amy. That's right. I should have picked up on that when you said it went down to 0. So this year it was 2,500 and 1,000, and he hasn't spent anything yet. So we thought, well, at the very least, we're going to bring it down by something. And who cares whether it's custodial or expensive? That basically is the rental of the school. So we just combined that 3,500 into 2,500. So.
And I hate to do it any less, especially when a new coordinator or a new director comes in. What they'll focus on might be different than what he was focusing on. And so I'd hate to make this any lower. It's a pretty bare bone budget.
No, they don't usually have, that's not one of the bigger budgets. Park and Rec has always been really small compared to the others.
That's true.
Okay. Well, I have no questions.
All set?
Yep. Thank you for doing the Park and Rec. Linda.
Sure. So that leaves 2 budgets, probably the 190 and the 122 shouldn't take more than we'll just do it right off the bat, Carolyn, next week, and then you guys can move into deliberations. Is there anything I can do to help you out? I will send you all the form. The 3-page finance committee budget that goes to town meeting. I've set that up for the annual town meeting. What I will do, because it will be less work later, is I'm going to put in the amounts equal to the town administrator's recommendations, because most of if you're gonna make some change, you can still make changes, but I'm gonna put it in like that, and you just circle if there's something you want to change. That's what we'll work from. I'll sit here on the spot and make those changes for you. But rather than have them 0 and take my time in entering each one, yes, moderator's $100 again. I'm just going to put them all equal to, and then you can look at them and we'll have it all available. So I'll send out that the finance committee budget form to all of you before next week's meeting, and we can take it from there.
Thank you.
If there's anything else you want from me in the meantime, just let me know.
Well, I wanted to ask Andy and Shardul just to see, well, Andy, you're still somewhat new, and Shardul, we threw you in halfway. Is there anything else that we can do to help you understand any of the things better? Because that's a lot, and unless you know it from the past, maybe you do, there's quite a bit there.
Once you get the hang of reading the columns, to me, I guess it would always be helpful to see percentage increase. The dollar amounts are great, but sometimes having a percent can be a little bit more, at least for me to process. Okay, that went up. It was a 5% increase, or was it a 50% increase? You have to do a little bit of math all the time. So if you're in your Excel spreadsheets, that column that goes 23 to 24, having a percentage increase would be helpful for me. I don't know if anybody else would find that.
So Andy, my only comment is that as long as everyone recognizes, like when the COA or Parks and Rec gets it, well, Parks and Rec because they're level funded, when the smaller budgets have an increase, it can be like a huge percentage.
Right.
So that's my only caution is that when you read it, just make sure it's.
Well, having both values there, I mean, that's the caution on the small side, but the flip side is when you get to the bigger budgets, sometimes a large percentage can get in there quickly when you're, suddenly, why is that a 12% bump on a large budget versus a 12% bump on a small?
I'll send it out in Excel early enough so that if there's anything that you want to do with your own version, then you
I can play with that. That would be great.
I'll do it in Excel.
Leave it.
Yeah, sometimes I do it in
modifiable.
the PDF and send it out, but it sounds you want to be able to manipulate it, and that would be fine.
Great, thank you.
I think actually, Linda, if you don't mind sending, so you probably have the budget book in a document. So is there a way to get the budget book electronically sent to us? Or sent to me? Because I'm gonna do the minutes too. I'm working on those, but it would be nice if I had an electronic version of the
Yeah, I'll
budget
send
book.
it again. I just did it. I just sent it to Sharjul. I had originally when my first email that said they're ready. I said that I actually attached it to that email, but I'd be happy to.
Oh,
So.
I'm sorry, I didn't even notice. I guess
okay.
because I've been using my book.
So yeah, I think I don't think David Phil ever picked one up. I think he only wanted electronically. So
That's the best way. Yep.
He is here.
it just takes so long to scroll through sometimes. So,
Okay.
but do you want me to send it again, Amy? I
If
think
you won't mind sending it to me,
I
so I
just
don't
did
have to
last
search
week.
for it.
Yeah, I just got Sharjul's out, so it's really high on my screen. So
Thank you.
yeah, I'll send that out to everybody again. That's fine. And if you're ever missing it, it actually is on the town website too. I probably should have been saying that ahead of meetings for anyone who wanted to be looking at it that's watching from outside of our group. But
Okay, that's good to know too. Thank you.
Is
All
it-
right. Do you have anything else for the budget
Mm-mm.
right now, Linda?
no,
No. All right. Right before we end, I do have one other thing I wanted to ask, and it's just something that just came up. I happened to, I was talking to David, and so this is just a request if you guys don't mind. You know, a lot of you know that know me pretty well know that I just love talking in front of people at town meeting and getting up there and having to talk. My heart gets going and I get all nervous. I'm not a talker in front of people. So if you don't mind, and I'm also doing the chair. So since I'm doing the chair and doing the minutes, and I'm trying to go back and do all the minutes, if you don't mind, just for now or whatever, until for a while, if I step down and David, if I could nominate David to take over the chair for me for a little while and him do the talking, that would be fabulous.
just through town meeting and then you want it back? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
no, we can discuss it down the road afterwards too, but I'm just for, you know, he's willing to do the stuff. And if, I mean, I'm going to keep going with all those committees and doing everything I'm doing, but if he could, you know, he said he doesn't mind picking up some of those things. I'm okay with that.
If David's okay with it,
I'm okay with it, I suppose.
then I second that. No, did you make a motion or can you make a motion, Amy? I will make a motion. I make a motion that that we nominate David Phil as chairman of the Finance Committee effective tonight. At the end of the meeting.
Well, so Amy, are you stepping down? Is that what-
Not from the finance, but I would like to step down as I was doing chair and the minutes, and I would like to step down from the chair
Okay.
and then just do the minutes. If that's, unless, and usually we'll do this later down the road, but it was, everybody's been joining later. We had done everything and then David and Andy joined after. We had already done everything and then, yeah, and then we have you joining. So we haven't had a meeting and it's in the middle of budget. So I have been doing it all, but if, yeah, I would like to step down right now as the chair and still do the secretary part.
Okay, so that, does that need to be formalized or that's it? She just says that she's stepping down and that,
Well,
that
I'm
pretty much
asking
it?
everyone here if they have any issues with it. I mean, I'm not going anywhere, so I could still be there, but if you.
you don't want to do it, we're not going to force you.
Let's
No.
not close off all the
There is a
options.
motion,
Right,
there is a motion on the
there's a
floor.
motion on the floor.
You need a roll call.
Oh,
Amy, you're still chair, so you're gonna.
okay, so I'm roll calling. All right, Amy Fiden, yes. Paul Benjamin,
Yes.
Andy Kopacki,
Yes.
Shardul Parmar,
Yes.
and David Bell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your service, Amy,
Thank you.
as chair. You're not going far, though.
Not going far. Thank you.
So David is now chair, correct?
Yes, let David do the work. Yes, David's chair.
David, I would like to make a motion. Is that all right at this point? Not everything has to change tonight.
No, one's, I don't think anybody's gonna take away your favorite
Thank
part,
you.
Paul.
Thank you.
No one's ever gonna take away your part. Oh,
Wait, Sue has her hand up.
Go ahead. Sue?
Linda, did you do OPA? OPEB?
Yes, yes, we did that.
Okay.
I
Sorry.
piggybacked on Joan, yes.
Okay.
Paul?
Now? Yes, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hitting the red button.
Aye.
Thank